What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jake Peerley. I'm a professional cinematographer and colorist, and today we're taking a look at a real world project I worked on with a friend of mine by the name of Theo Kerr. If you want to check him out, I'll link everything below. This project in particular was kind of a space themed music video, and we were going for a really dead and Mars-like look. So when I was building the look, I referenced a few different things. One, I referenced the movie The Martian, which is an incredible movie, and I was inspired by it personally, so it was super fun to sort of bring the elements from that look into this project that I was working on. And then I also referenced some of Ad Astra, which was an incredible movie for color. And then lastly, I also referenced a few images from NASA of images that the Mars rover was able to capture of the actual surface of Mars. And those particularly came in handy for this project whenever I was grading the sky and wanting to layer a few different colors to really recreate this green yellow cast that the sky has on Mars. Side note, I'm not going to be necessarily pulling up those references in this video while I'm going through the grade because I've already done it. So really what I'm doing is just kind of culminating all of those looks and all the inspiration there and then recreating what I did in the actual process. So if you're also interested in seeing me take a look from a movie and then recreate it in Resolve as a tutorial for you guys, be sure to let me know in the comments as well. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel, drop a like on this video, and with that, let's get into today's video. All right, guys, let's hop into this tutorial. Super excited for this one because I really wanted to take this as an opportunity to show you just how easy it can be to really develop a strong look. It doesn't take a whole lot, honestly, and we're gonna look at just how to do that today, as well as how to bring that grade into another clip that's slightly different, and then how to do a little bit of shot matching just to make sure that the grade lines up between clips. First, I'm gonna zoom out on my nodes a little bit just so we can see everything. Let's give ourselves a little more space here, and then I'm gonna build the node tree real quick, and then I'm gonna break down what each one is for. All right, so here's how we're breaking this down. Each level is kind of like a step of the process. So we're starting off with just noise reduction up here. We're gonna come back to that later and leave it empty now. And then we have our balancing section. That's where we're gonna be doing the contrast, saturation, and making sure that all the colors really are even in the shot and shot properly. That's all of our color correction. Then we also have our warmth, and that's where we're gonna start using our temperature slider more as a creative tool than a technical tool. And that's really where a lot of this look is built. And then we're going to go in and further refine that look in the look node and then work with some of the different hues, because you're going to notice as we push a lot of red and orange into this, things that were already red in the shot, such as the suit here, they begin to get a little bit neon and oversaturated. So we're going to fix that here. And then look adjustment is where we're going to start pulling back on the look to start really making it look professional versus going too far. And then our global adjustments is where we're going to do our final modifications to the image. And then lastly, we have sharpen and grain. Now, if you're doing a project, typically I like to do my grain node on the timeline here. Just that way, if I need to make a change to it, instead of having to go through every shot, if you have hundreds of shots in a project, you don't have to go through and change it on each one. You can just change it in the timeline node, and that's a great way to save yourself a lot of time. The other upside of that is that you can just disable it, and then while you're viewing everything, going through the timeline, it'll save you on processing power. So our first step here, always is exposure. This waveform here is really, really handy because it's going to tell us where the exposure of the image is sitting. And currently it's actually a little bit too low. So we're going to see what we can do to bring that image up. So we're going to go to offset and just start pulling this up. I don't want to go too far because you can see it's kind of washing everything out. So we're just going to go as far as we can. And then we're going to reintroduce that contrast with our contrast and pivot tool. So placing that waveform in the center really gives us a better starting point whenever we do want to introduce contrast. So this is looking good here. As I always say, you don't want to go too far early on with your contrast. You want to leave it pretty soft so you can go in later and dial it in. Now we're going to go from our contrast into balancing. So looking at the waveform, it's pretty even already. One thing I want to do is just introduce a little bit more green. I feel like it's a little too magenta. And then let's see if we can balance it out anymore with our temp controls. I think right around here is fine. However, we are about to introduce a whole lot more warmth. So I'm going to add a little more saturation, and we can always pull this back later. That looks pretty good there. And now let's go into our warmth node and let's just start bringing this up. We'll leave this right around 1400. And then we'll go into our look node and start further pushing this warmth in. And we're just going to pull this towards greenish. We want it to really just not feel like earth. We keep pushing red around in the lower range, especially in the midtones. And you can see that suit is just going crazy right now. We're about to fix that though. Okay, so let's go into hue. We're gonna go into our curves now. And in our hue versus hue, let's see if we can make any good adjustments here. Yeah, I think we can pull yellows just a little bit more red. And then let's go into our saturation and pull the reds down. And then yeah, I like that a lot right there. Just from our balanced image, let's look at what these 3 nodes have done. So to start off, we just added some warmth. That's literally the only thing we did in this node. And then we started working with our lift, gamma, gain. And then lastly, we adjusted some of that oversaturation. It's looking really good so far. Now I also want to go into our look adjustment, and I want to balance out some of the reds in the image with some blues in the shadows. So to do that, I'm going to my log wheels, and let's first just start bringing the log wheels down to see what we're adjusting here. The great thing about the log wheels is that you can control how much of the shadows each parameter is adjusting. So I want to go into the low range here, and let's just start pulling this down because I want to get a little more specific with the shadows here. That's good. I'm going to reset it now, and then we're going to pull some blue back in. One characteristic about this look is that nothing's really purple. It's almost always going to be between that teal and red side. Nothing's going to go to the right side of the wheel. So we're going to pull this a little bit further towards green just to keep it out of the magenta space. Maybe even up a little bit, and I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, so if we disable that, we're seeing what we're doing there. Might be a little too green, so we'll pull that back some, and I like that a lot more. And again, this is why we're dialing in the contrast right now. And I can also go back into my primaries and just pull up on those shadows a little bit so we're not crushing anything. That looks pretty good. Let's also take our gamma and pull it down some, just to bring everything a little bit lower. So now what I want to do is go back into the look node, because I think the sky could be a little bit more green or blue. I was pushing it more towards yellow originally, but I think it could stand to come back some, mainly because I want that color separation, that contrast. And with the entire environment being as red as it is, I'd like to have some area to push a little bit of blue. So I'm going to go into my gain wheel and just start moving this around. And I'm liking that right there. All right, let's go into our global adjustments now and maybe add some mid-tone detail, honestly, because this is a really grungy look. So if we bring that in, it's just gonna sort of do sharpening, but in a softer way, I guess is the best way to explain it. And again, I wanna bring some more warmth into the midtones and then cool off the shadows. I'm liking the way this is looking now. I really think we could just about leave it like this. We don't have to get too in depth here. I think this looks good. And if we look at our original image, we've definitely created a mood, and I think it's gonna hold up on several shots because we don't have any keys or qualifiers, and that's just gonna make it much cleaner to go throughout the entire image. So one thing I do wanna do is just go back into our curves here, and let's pull down a little more saturation out of the reds, maybe the oranges as well. Let's see if we can balance this out. That was pretty good. And then lastly, let's go ahead and go into sharpen and pull this down to 0.46, 0.47. I find 0.47 is a pretty good range for Blackmagic cameras, and this was shot on the Ursa Mini G2, I do believe. And then let's go into grain, and we will choose our grain. And I'm gonna go with 35mm 400T, but I wanted to make it stronger because I kind of had a 2001 Space Odyssey feel when I was watching it. So let's zoom in and see how this grain is looking. It's really easy to zoom in on the sky to get an idea. And maybe just bring that strength up a little more because I want it to be present. I want it to be in your face. So there we go. That's the most of the look. Now let's go to the next shot and see how much work is going to be required to make this pretty intense look match from one shot to another. Yeah, so right off the bat, we see that these two images don't quite match up. A lot of it's pretty easy to tell that it's too green and the exposure isn't quite sitting right. So all we're gonna do is go into the contrast node and our balance node, and then maybe global adjustments just to make some final tweaks. So contrast, let's go ahead and let's start working with the exposure. We're gonna take our offset and pull this down just slightly, keeping an eye on the scopes. And we'll pull our gain up, gamma down, just until it's sitting kind of in line with the other image. And then let's go ahead and pull some of that green out by pulling a tint up. And let's warm it up a little bit. Just kind of balancing these around. Okay, that's not too bad. I'd say that's done a lot so far just in one node. And then let's go into our balance and we'll continue to tweak this a little more. Let's get a little more fine-tuned here. I think we could stand to push a little more green or blue into the gain, and then balance that out with a little more magenta and red/orange in the gamma. Let's also push a little more red into the lift. And we're going to kind of push it too far, and then we'll go into our global adjustment node and balance that out with our log wheels, go into our shadows, and then pull that towards bluish green. It's looking pretty good. Just to make this a little easier to see, we're going to hide the clips here just so we can zoom in a little further. And one thing I'm noticing is that the second clip is a little bit too, I guess, red, maybe a little too magenta. So also in the global adjustments, we're going to go into our offset and then pull this towards green just slightly. And with that change right there, really our anchors being the sky and the helmet, it's a lot easier to see that they're matching up pretty well. And if we go into our split screen, I mean, we can see they're pretty dang close. One thing I can see that needs to change is let's go ahead and pull our gain down slightly, maybe our gamma as well. And that looks really good. Maybe we'll push with our gain, we'll push this up towards a little bit more orange, yellow. Awesome. And then also keeping an eye on the shadows here. I think we could stand to go into our log wheels and pull them down just a little bit. Maybe push them just a little more towards blue-green. Pull straight down. And that's looking good. So now looking at these two shots side by side, I would say we have a much cleaner grade versus just copying the grade over. And we really only touched 3 nodes. That was our contrast node, our balance node, and global adjustments. So also with this image, go ahead and walk through these one by one. So we have our contrast, balance, where we started to warm this image up and fix that green shift, and then our warmth, where we really started building the look, and then look, where we started dialing it in. Hue is where we killed that neon, and then our look adjustments, where we balanced things out a little more. Global adjustments, where we really started to dial it in, and where we came back and fixed some of the exposure issues we had. And then lastly, just sharpen and grain. And then the last thing we would do is go into noise reduction, set this to 3 frames, bring these up to about 6.8, and then our spatial threshold, we're gonna unlink that and then bring this one up to about 7 or 8. And then we can actually take this noise reduction node here and then copy it, go into our previous clip and paste it onto there. So now I would say these two shots sit next to each other very well, and it's not too jarring to go from one to the next. All right, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something. If you did, please be sure to send this to your friends. You guys let me know what you want to see in the future by leaving a comment below. You can also send me a message on Instagram. I respond to just about every message that comes through. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and I will see you in the next one.